uh, webinars, part of our series, and in the great month of November. And I show that for you today, and probably are thinking, hey, Steve, that is anything that I have outside my window. But last time I checked, I think there's snow in some certain places in South Carolina and certainly up north already. So I think I'm pretty close. Actual visual there. So, well, hey, you guys all should be thanked for here today's webinar. There's going on in your schedule, key priorities, and I appreciate you all taking time to spend with us today on these matters. Today's webinar is 2015 key employment items. You know, as into this time of year, you're sitting with on a regular basis because you get through your December, well, November 1, but December 1 for small groups, the January rules for us, and it's just a time of year. And this year doesn't necessarily cause for reflection. It's not this time of year because we got a lot going on. There are some key things that I want to at least express to you all, kind of touch on employer actions here today, and I think you will walk away, as I each and every month, with practical tips, but actually real on ensuring that your clients, your groups, are under their obligations under ACA, IRS, under the Department of Labor, all of these other factors. Good day to you all. My name is Steve Jack, the Senior Vice President of Development and Channel Sales here at PrimePay. Welcome you here today to the webcast. Part of just the agenda, what we do is that everyone's lines webcast. We have quite a number of you on today, but that doesn't mean that we don't hear from you. Okay, in your GoToMeeting bar, there is a question box. I am going to be covering a lot of good stuff today. You will have questions. I want to hear from you. If you would, please go ahead and type your in that GoToMeeting menu bar, and I will not be able to probably address questions during the webinar, but for people who have participated in these before, we will be follow-up email that will include of this presentation, recording, but we're also going to put together all of your questions. All of you have about those questions. No, it'll be a huge help to you. All right. As we get into this, as we look into today, as you guys are all aware, I fill this hour up, and today is no, so we need to kind of get right here today. But agenda, what we do for month to month, the ACA, HHS, I mean, you name it, we get great updates each and every month. And so before we get into the main content of ours, we generally have maybe just a update. So we want to provide you. There was a recent IRS revenue procedure came out that discussed inflation-adjusted 2015 limits. Let's cover those. I don't want to cover them. There's a lot. So, but we'll cover a few that I would be very apt for you to know and understand talking with your clients at this time of the year. We've also then put together a top, right? David Letterman does it so-so. I'm going to do it great. Put together our top 10 list of maybe some key employer items, okay? The all-encompassing list, and if you do these 10 things, if your employers are safe, not necessarily, but we want to be in on these top 10 that are going to make the most impact to your employers as you come into 2015 and certainly beyond through next year. Our of our webinar today is on these two ACA employer info reporting. You're going to need to understand what I had gone through a little more subsurface previous webinar, going to take a little deeper dive today in regard to what that employer information report really covers. The second area then is on measurement period. Measurement period of action. Maybe some of you are going, what, Steve? Are we kind of sparse kind of throughout entire webcasts and at the end of each focus item, I do want to discuss kind of movement, with your client. What is your role or employer's role or folks' role in regard to managing these compliance and needs for your clients? Go ahead and get started. As you have seen just over the last couple weeks, IRS just this time of year unveiled revenue procedure notice that holds the inflation-adjusted limit from year to year. And those limits were just announced here, I don't know, a week or two ago. And so I wanted to cover these that I thought you would have impact as you're talking with your client right now, the year. So one of the things that I'm listing here is FSA Salary Reduction. As you know, due to ACA, was imposed on the health FSA time, at least by the government, that an employee could only elect a minimum of $2,500. As part of that legislation, as we kind of drafted that or enacted that, what it also said that those numbers, or that limit, would be or could be adjusted by or cost of living from year to year. They've not made any adjustments now. And so the new limit for 2015 years, yes, that's including January, is $2,550. So an employer ultimately can define, they could say 500, 750, 1,000, 2,500, but as that employer states that, now the maximum federal limit for a health FSA is 2,550. The FSA role exists. The health FSA $100, that did not change. So in addition to an election of $2,500 for the coming plan year 2015, employee could potentially also have a rollover amount of $5 that could also be added to that specific limit. So $2,550. We've already, my know that. I mean, for their January 1, you need to get that information to them right away. The employer can make a decision if it's still based on their open enrollment meeting abilities to adjust that before the. As we get into into work and is able to pay at a parking garage. So qualified parking, that's $250 pre-tax per month. Qualified training, so if an employee needs to take the bus, the subway to and from work, the ability to commute, pre-tax up to $100 per month, there is change for that as well. I sometimes wonder if any of the employees actually commute to work. These don't change very often. So anyway, we'll keep. So $250.30 for qualifying and transit. Apply to some. We've seen an increase in this over the years, so I'll mention it. The adoption assistance, as you see, or flows under area plan, or the exclusion file your federal taxes has been increased to $13,400 per year, calendar year or planned year, how it's being used. There's been no change. We were expecting any, but dependent care is pretty static for the last several, and that is still at $5 per family per year. One thing to note then on small health care tax credit, you all are aware, business, a small employer, ability, as most employers, to take in on the premiums, the cost coverage that they're providing, right? Also, ACA has instituted or enabled a health care tax credit. And for small employers, generally with employer coverage fewer than 25 full equivalents, okay? So it's the small employer, and the only way that they can qualify, okay, besides these numbers that I'm showing, for that small business tax credit is going to be through they would have to offer coverage, then actually enroll the employees through shop exchange. So that small business healthcare options exchange, the shop exchange. So what changed the average annual ten employees, average wage was $52,000. They're not going to qualify. It's over the maximum. All right. Medical savings accounts. This is not related to HSAs, health savings. Okay, so understand that. Inflation-adjusted numbers for HSA generally come out from sometime in time period each and every year. Already been announced. But I do. Many of you on the webcast have clients know about medical savings accounts, and so just throw for information purposes that the deductibles for single and family, those are the current or new ranges for those, okay? And then lastly, note, because we have many clients that deal with PCORI fee, I wanted to let of the change in the amount of the PCORI fee, is 2014-15. PCORI is the Patient-Centered Outcome Research Institute, and it is now be assessed at $2.08 per employee or per participant, okay, depending on the type of plan being offered. Now, as a reminder that sponsor is for paying the fees insured plan. Generally speaking, sponsor is the employer. So, you do have integrated plans with a fully insured plan, but you've got maybe with a cell phone as well. Both plans are subject to the fees. Okay, and $2.08 would be assessed, or these are effective years ending on after October 1st, 2014. Okay, so for the next couple year effective dates here through the year, that 8 cents will apply. Now, just as a reminder, that's not to be assessed or paid, say, until it's due 31st of 2015 or by 31st of each year. So a lot of great information there. These are generally that I think, they're benefits that your employers are offering to their employees, and certainly something to discuss and provide. Okay. So let's hit our top. I wanted to put together at least a key priority for you as I dive into it. Guys, look at this here for the first. You might instantly think you list 10, but there might be like subgroup items, that we need to discuss with our clients. Might be, might be the case. But what I wanted to do list is to really just get you, what is your role? What's your communication style or practice been in communicating a lot of the keys for employers? Employer mandate is heating up. Now is the time to really making or perform assessment of the compliance requirements that your employer group need to comply with. I wanted to kind of generate this that would hopefully kind of point you in the direction as a discussion point for clients. So let's number one. And number one is actually a kind of a no duh. Okay, so this is kind of an easy one. By now, the employer mandate beginning 2015 is going to to employers. By now, you should have had discussions with your employers in regard to whether, are they considered a large employer, right? You've determined whether they are on the ball or not. They're clearly over 100 full-time employees and equivalents or not. But you're beginning stages, and what I want to say is maybe some of you here have a lot of employees over 100 or have very few, and that's fine. But you many employers that are going to be in that 50 to space that you clearly are going to have these discussions right now with. Now time to be having those conversations. A big item, a great discussion will be with the employer. I'm going to go into detail here. That's our focus, one of our focuses here on the employer information reporting under ACA. This is, I'm going to go into some greater detail on this, right? So for sake of diving into this further, I won't. But what I want to do as I get into the conversation about this reporting, I want you to think about where's your role? So as a broker, as an agency, how can you help your client this compliance? Okay, it's very detailed. It can be detailed. It could potentially be local, depending on certain strategies or technology being used. Plus, this is a big requirement. Employers need to plan if they are going to have to begin that reporting very, very soon. So begin the plan on that specific topic. Also, not forget this top 10 list, Form W-2 report. You all are probably somewhat familiar on W-2s. If what you want to focus on is not necessarily what the benefit eligible employees you may have, because the numbers that you see in a census or otherwise, maybe you're just seeing benefit eligible, but you're not seeing the total number of W-2 employees. Well, it's based on W-2s. So you're going to want to, it's how many they generated. So it's not even meaning active employees. So it is a good question to ask. You might have a client that has 190 employees that are benefit eligible, and you need to ask the question about whether they have 250 or more. Number 4 is really, I guess, one of the numbers here on the top 10 list that really carries a lot of subgroups underneath it. To just state review plan documents is doing a complete disservice to that specific list or this specific requirement. Folks, there are a lot of plan documents and requirements that an employer needs to employ to ensure compliance. When's the last time you've sat down with them, with the employer, and literally have gone through some of the key requirements? Here recently, Section 125 documents there's been some permissible new election information, special enrollment rules that can now be added or amended to existing plans. You need to talk to your employers to say, hey, are you thinking about adding those new that new language and amend your plan accordingly? Under Section 105, we run across many 105 plans that carry no plan document or SPD. Wow, under any 105 plan, you must have the plan document requirement in check. Also, when's the last time you've literally reviewed the documents? Are they 5 years old? Are they 7 years old? You know, there are certain requirements that an employer must disclose or distribute those SPs every 3 years, every 5 years, so on and so forth. So, employer, when's the last time you've actually distributed those? Now, ERISA is a completely, you know, another major comprehensive plan document aspect. Employer, when have you distributed your plan document or SPD, ERISA SPD, to your employee? Your employer might just go, huh? Or look completely puzzled or whatnot. Well, if they haven't distributed it, then they don't have ERISA documents. They might be thinking their insurance certificate is an ERISA document, or some other, you know, carrier disclosure that was created that it might cover all of that. You need to review the plan document. So that's a huge number 4, but it is a fantastic conversation to have with each and every one of your clients, because it pertains to each and every one of your clients who have health and welfare benefits. Health plan identifier, if you guys saw the news here just recently, HHS or CMS, they've actually removed or postponed the enforcement, kind of the non-compliance aspects of an employer not getting the identification or HPI. That was due today, November 5th. Plans, and for small plans, due November 5th of the year. But do know that tone that enforcement, but I will say, you and your employer have this conversation and start thinking on how to obtain specific HPI. Even though the enforcement has been postponed, for the health plan identification number or identifier is still there. Transitional reinsurance, as most of you know, as part of ACA, there was specific revenue generators, I guess, to help pay for the cost of ACA. I spoke already about PCORI, the transitional reinsurance fee, also something that was in the annual fee for 2014 was or is $63. The transitional reinsurance, there's been a specific portal that's created by CMS that members can go through in order to pay, or well, to hit the number of members that they have. HHS then can invoice, I guess, for the fee. That fee is $3 per covered life, and based under the that does decrease over the year to actually phased out, okay, at a few years. Actual date was. The new for 2015 is $44. Sit with your employers. They need to consider budgetary items next year. They're going to see what reinsurance fee is for 2015, which is $63. It will be reduced next year. Still have that $44 per covered life aspect. Will need to apply 2015. The PCORI, I did mention that, but it did render itself important here as top 10 list. You've got to about it. It applies to many plans. It can apply to HRAs, and so you need to understand the PCORI fee is going to impact kind of your employer in the coming year. So as they think about it, the fee July 31st, we're going to be looking at a $2 per participant, okay, for plans January, actually it's end of October, and then 2 months where you're going to be at $2. Okay, so to plan accordingly and think about and ensure that that payment actually does facilitated at the end. Annual ACA notice. Okay, you say, Steve, I is covered by of what the insurance provides. You're right. I listed but a few. This would be another kind of subgroup of items that you could have part of your discussion. But C is certainly one ACA notice. That's the summary of benefit notices. Speaking, the employer is to deliver the SPs, directly, to you as an employer. Out, some things, but there's a lot of different types of notices. There's been several acts, that have been enacted, from PCORI to a ton of different things. But there's also a notice of patient protections, and I'm just throwing it out there that this is to be provided to plan participants. A lot of times, patient protection language can be found potentially in an ERISA SPD. Okay, so be covered in that respect. It could be in an annual notice that is delivered or maintained, distributed by the carrier. But basically, it informs this patient protection notice informs participants of the plan's terms regarding maybe the designation of a primary care provider. Includes the right to choose a primary care provider or pediatrician, so on and so forth. So, the patient protection notice is certainly something that's going to be needed. I mean, these are just some main, I just wanted to touch on a couple things to ensure to the employer, are you distributing this to your employees? It's one thing receiving it from the carrier or from a third-party administrator that might be providing the service, but are you actually distributing it, and are you distributing it in the timely manner in which it needs to be distributed? The next item is COBRA, and the main point I want to make out of this, there's been, I think, a lot of confusion in regard to whether employers are still required to file or to provide, initial rights notice letters, qualifying event notice letters. I mean, gosh, healthcare.gov is available, so can't they just go there? Well, the answer is to the latter, yeah, the healthcare.gov is there, but the requirement for COBRA and the notice letters, the qualifying event letters, the election letters, all of that is still needed to comply under COBRA. That offer of coverage to that former employee is still required. So what you want to ensure is that employer, who's doing this? Are you getting the general notice of COBRA rights, out to all your existing current employees? Are you providing the notice of qualifying event and the election notices? Are you providing that information? The notice of special enrollments rights, if I can speak, could also be included. So what are you providing there? The IRS activities, I would also ask your client, not only are you making the distribution of the notices when you need to, but are you actually, do you actually have a COBRA procedure manual? And because that's one of the top requirements that the IRS is looking for. And still, for non-compliance, rests on some of these in a greater fashion than others, and I think this number 10 fits into that category. Your failure of non-compliance under ERISA can financially be, tremendous, right? So a simple question to your employers as you're sitting with them is really honing in on, and that kind of covers all your health and welfare benefits. But even more importantly, have you distributed a summary plan description under ERISA to each of your employees? If the answer is no or questionable at best, if they couldn't produce one right then and there while you're sitting with them, they do not have an ERISA document. So SPDs, summary plan descriptions, are extremely important. SPDs are not a one-page document. It's not a certificate of insurance coverage that may be, many pages from an insurance carrier. But it's easily a 15 to, 30-page document that covers so many different things, from claims, appeals, procedures, eligibility, you name it, under the ERISA guidelines. An employer also needs an SMM, a summary of material modification. That's for changes, right? Employers change their health and welfare benefits on a consistent basis. When's the last time you've distributed an SMM? And then lastly here is just under ERISA, there are specific notice requirements. Sometimes carriers do provide them. My main question would be, or your question to your client would be, well, are you distributing these to your employees? The two that I list here that are specific annual notices, so they must be distributed annually, is the Women's Health and Cancer Rights Act, okay, or WICRA as it's sometimes labeled. And the last one here is a Qualified Medical Child Support Order, okay, and that basically is a notification, that goes to participants, any child named under that order, and the child's representative, right? So it's just to get that information to those who need to care for that specific dependent. But those notices are required. So as you look at specific 10 items, you sit here and say not necessarily greater than the non-compliance factor, though, of a few of these could be really hurt. COBRA, if enforced, and if you're found, you guys have all seen, many of the lawsuits and things that have occurred through that. So this 10 list is to you engage your employer, specifically 10 items that really can make an impact in showing your obligation under the specific requirements. All right, so let's get into our two focus areas. This has been one that's been kind of floating around some deadline is now approaching. You need to engage your employers in a way to help describe, well, how are we going to get this done? And I say we because it really is going to be a you involvement along with the employer. Maybe not just the two of you. Maybe there's other components, and I'll get into that here. But you and your employer are going to be the key facilitators in regard to collecting the data needed to fulfill this requirement. So let's try to tackle this. I've tried to break this down as easy as possible to lay it out, hopefully in a way that is really practical to understand. So let's just talk about what is required here first, okay? And just kind of an overview. And I'm putting a lot here on the screen here for you to look at. So under the Affordable Care Act, it has added information reporting requirements that fall under Internal Revenue Code sections 6055 and 6056. If you guys are going through searches on your, through the internet, what have you, you can certainly alert to 6055 and 56. and pull out some wonderful information, okay, information that you need to review. So what does this affect, okay, this reporting requirement? It will affect all 2015 plan years, okay? So as we're not talking about a 2014 plan year, okay, per se, all right, but 2015 plan years. Now, you might think, well, this is reported annually, yes, but you know, we're just talking about January 1 plan years. No, no, no. We are also talking about that this reporting does apply to plans that are not on a calendar year. So if you would have an employer that is going to have a March 1st renewal date, the reporting requirements will apply to that 2015 plan year, even though it's not on a calendar year. All right, so think about this reporting here a second. So let's really go high level. So, oh my goodness, Steve, so we've got this reporting under 60, 55, and 56. Why? Why do we need it? So we have two things, two major mandates as part of ACA. We have the individual mandate and we have the employer mandate. The individual mandate states that all individuals must have coverage or pay a penalty, okay, or have minimum essential coverage or pay a penalty. Employers who fit the definition of an applicable large employer will pay a penalty as well if they're not offering their full-time employees and dependents coverage, but also if they're offering affordable coverage, right? So not only just minimum essential coverage and minimum value, all of that good stuff, but also offering affordable coverage. So the IRS, how are they going to determine if an individual goes into, if they actually go into, well, if an employer, if an individual goes into healthcare.gov, lost my train of thought, goes into healthcare.gov and they enroll in benefits and the, you know, they do apply for a subsidy or they get approved for a subsidy. Now the IRS needs to confirm and verify, right? They've got to confirm and verify under the individual mandates or the employer mandates whether specific penalties apply to that individual and or employer, but whether or not really truly, does that employee, do they deserve a subsidy? Are they qualified for a subsidy? So under 6055, the employee penalties kind of come out or are exposed, I should say, under 6055, so that's kind of the focus under 6055, and the employer penalties come under focus and scrutiny under 6056, okay? And I'll dive deeper into that. Method of filing is, you know, electronic, you know, certainly paper filing, but I'd say most employers are going to provide electronic filing. And then I am often asked here already, well, what about the penalties? Well, penalties will exist under the current sections of the code, 67, 21, and 22. There are penalties that show up as, you know, say $100, just kind of like the standard DOL and even excise tax amounts, $100 per filing, $100 per employee, and so forth. So 6721 covers the failure to file correct information returns, and 22 there is the failure to provide employee statements. So think about the rules under the W-2, okay? So employers are obligated to create W-2s, to send W-2s out by January 31st, and then the appropriate filing, you know, by March 31st, right? So this is no different. Similar rules and requirements. The annual filings, it does need to be filed by February 28th, 2016, okay? So we have some time, but now's the time to act. March 31st if filing electronically. The employee statement, so think about W-2s, okay, although this is a separate statement, employee statements are due on or before January 31st, 2016. Looking specifically at 6055, okay, who is responsible to report under Section 6055? Well, if the health plan is insured, so a fully insured plan, the insurer is going to handle that. They're going to manage that reporting. If the health plan is self-insured, the employer is going to be responsible under the reporting 6055. So think about that. I'm not necessarily just talking about applicable large employers, with that. So as you think about self-insured, I mean, there's all different types, right? So an employer would be responsible for that. Again, if you think about the purpose, and as I showed on the previous slide, sick coverage. What forms are used? Just going to the real basics here. So large employers, it's going to be forms 1094C and 1095C. Okay, large employers would complete their specific sections on those forms. Insurers, okay, which I would say, a lot of insurers are going to have fully insured plans. Employers will have fully insured plans. So insurers will complete Form 1094B and 1095B. So that's 6055. Now, as we look at 6056, who is responsible? Now, 6056 is specific to applicable large employers, okay, under Code Section 4980H. All right, so there is some relief here in regard to those employers who do not fit that definition. Okay, so I'm going to the standard applicable large employer definition under 4980H, okay, which again is next year is 100 full-time in equivalents for next year, and then that goes to 50 plus in 2016. So the purpose of 6056 is to report information about employer-sponsored health coverage offered to full-time employees. I'm going to dig into the details here a little bit further. What forms are used? 1094C and 1095C. So if we were to just kind of summarize this, if I could just kind of put this into just a quick synopsis, because I know some of you are going, well, maybe some of you are asleep right now, or your eyes are going, but self-insured medical plans, employer, so for self-insured, self-funded, employer completes Form 1095C. They complete both sections required for both 55 and 50, so there are sections, 1094, 1095, and they need to those sections. For full plans, employer completes parts 1 and which is related to 6 reporting on Form 1095. The health insurer is responsible for the 6055 reporting, 1095B. So on the third side, you pretty much the employer being engaged in the process solely. On the insured side, you're going to see the employer get engaged, okay? Mean that the employer doesn't have reporting to do because they will. Of simplified reporting. What that means is that as an employer, you're going to tell them in your reporting how you are offering coverage to your employees. How are you driving a minimum essential coverage? Are you giving it to 70% of your employees, 95% of your employees, full-time employees, and so forth? You'll select that option, that method. Also then, in the middle description of each month of coverage offered by the employer, this will be broken out by month. The total number of full-time employees for each month. Of course, the total number of employees. The name, social, address of employee, that'll go on 1095C. The calendar months of coverage offered. If you've seen the forms 1094 and 1095, you'll see that it's broken out by months, and you're going to have to lay out which months of coverage that was offered. You're going to need to provide indicator codes reflecting the minimum essential coverage, or what the minimum value was, or the federal poverty level minimums for each calendar month. And then the employee share of the lowest cost monthly premium for self-only coverage. Now, as a bonus, I say that a little tongue-in-cheek, but as an extra bonus, employers must also complete Part 3, a Form 1095-C. Now, generally speaking, these are applicable large employers. For each individual who is enrolled in the employer's self-insured health plan, regardless of whether the employee is full-time. So you're talking about COBRA, you're talking about retirees potentially. I mean, you could be talking about several other employees. It could be a variable hour employee that, or employees, a class that is also being offered coverage. So it may not just include full-time employees. So I don't know if that's a bonus, but extra requirement. We'll leave it at that. So, wow. Okay, so that's a lot. You know, there's a lot to that, and until you actually start going through the forms, you start seeing some of the level of detail. I just want you to think about some next steps. Okay, not everything has been figured out yet. The forms are not final. 1094 and 1095 are still in draft form. So, but what we also have is, and as part of your due diligence with your clients, is that, you know what, forms are not due in 2015, but you need to begin to figure out how employers are going to be planning or capturing this data as of the beginning of the year, okay? You do need to figure that out. Whether you as an agency can help, whether your employer can just really run with it, whether it's something from a, you know, say a vendor, a partner, a PrimePay, you know, a payroll provider that might be able to help in that regard as well. What I will suggest, and we're going to provide it in the follow-up email to you, but we're going to provide you the link, and I would review the Q&As from the IRS, specifically to 60, 55, and 56. It's very well detailed, provides great information in regard to the reporting standards. I would read that before you take a dive into the discussion with your client. But lastly, you need to start to frame your role. Your role. What is your role? What data, what information can you provide? What are you willing to provide? What will your E&O permit? But you need to begin to frame that role. You also need to dig into your employer. How do you expect to capture this? If we know that this is the data that's needed, how are you going to go about doing it? So understand that employer's role and what each employer, and they might all be different, right, as far as what they're going to do. You need to also talk with your insurers. Let's talk with the carriers and figure out exactly what their process is going to be as well. You need to probably take a proactive stance and reach out, and let's figure that out in what they're going to do. And then lastly, determine who that employer is working with. We'd love to sit here and say that PrimePay has determined that we're going to fully support employers through the entire process, file all the forms on their behalf, everything, right? I don't know. We might make that decision. We haven't made that decision yet. But how do payroll providers, how will they help in relation to this data and information that needs to be created? I do fully expect that PrimePay will help our clients in some capacity. And just look for new news from us here in a little bit in regard to how we might handle that. But begin to frame this role, your role, employer's role in this discussion. I think it'll be a very, very good discussion to have. All right, measurement periods. Let's. The last focus item here for today is to re-engage you in your discussion of measuring variable hour employees with your employers. At this point, with the employer mandate now officially starting here as of January 1, many of you might have kind of put it on the back burner, meaning, you know what, I had the discussion, I've got just a handful of clients, over 100 full-time employees, equivalents, and, you know, we kind of tackled them, but I'm not really tackling anybody else. What I want you to do and begin to think about as I show some examples and cover this is, not only do you need to think about those employers, those applicable large employers over 100 in 2015, and I would hope that they've already begun measuring, because they need to, and I'll explain why, but you also really need to be considering all of your employer groups that are in that 50 to 99 space today. Today. Why? Because action is now required. Now is the time to actually begin what those measurement periods are, and actually the measuring, generally speaking, should be beginning here by the end of 2014. for many of the plan years. So let's kind of touch on this. So what is required? So if we were to encapsulate this into one specific quote, all right, beginning with plan years effective 2015, employers with 100 plus full-time employees or full-time equivalents must offer medical coverage that is affordable and provides minimum value to full-time employees and dependents up to age 26, or face penalties, right? So that is the classic definition in regard to the employer mandate. And employers can choose to, and I'm sure at this point you've had conversations with your clients in regard whether they are going to be willing to pay or play in regards to this mandate. Now, clearly, if they're not going to play, all right, maybe you don't have to listen, but that won't be all your employers. You clearly are going to have employers that will not play, and in that regard are willing to pay. So, all right, nothing to do here. Okay, that makes that easy. But for employers that are going to play, they're going to want to watch this closely. So the applicable large employer status is determined actually based on any 6 consecutive month period in 2014, okay? It's based on a calendar year, not a plan year, all right? So an employer today in 2014 can take any 6 consecutive month period to determine that status. Let's assume you've done that here already. This does affect plan years beginning in 2015, all right? Under the current rules, they must offer coverage, this is just for 2015, to 70% of its full-time employees and dependents. And then if you look at the employer shared responsibility payment, you take the number of full-time employees, you can subtract up to the 80 instead of the 30 that was originally. That'll go back down to that in 2016. But in 2015, up to 80, multiply that by 1/12 of the 2,000 and you get your monthly penalty amounts. Okay, so that kind of will provide at least what that penalty would be. So really the end result, though, as you look at the employer mandate, is that if an employer is willing to play, then they need to begin measuring their variable hour employee base now, because as we just went with the employer information report under ACA, I mentioned that and verify, the IRS confirm and verify. How will the employer back up the data that they're going to put into 4 and 1095, right? How are they going to do that? Through periods. So let's kind of, some real basic, I have shown this before at one point, go through this actually more quickly into just the case study aspect. IRS has published a framework for employers to measure their variable employees. Okay. And although they're an employer obligated to framework, I would encourage employers to probably that it is laid out for each and every employer on the type of employees that they have, seasonality, so forth. All right, create some flexibility. There are 3 main measurement periods as to be defined: initial measurement, the administrative period, and the period. The standard or measurement period is at least 3, no more than 12 months. That measurement periods vary based on these categories. So if union, non-union, non-collectively bargained employees, to change your measurement period by those specific classes. The same goes for salary versus hourly, maybe employees in different divisions, entities that might be part of a group, and then employees, you just have different locations in different states. Measurement periods could, the length of periods change or be different in those specific categories. Each employer, once that standard measurement period has been completed, you need at least a little bit of time. I mean, just from an employee perspective or from a benefit consultant perspective, to what was measured and needs to be offered or not offered, right? Maximum period for administration is 90 days. And just the main rule, administrative not just prevent any gaps. Pretty basic language there. And the stability period is time of assessment, time to keep the coverage or non-status quo. Stability period needs to at least 6 consecutive months, but no shorter than the standard measurement. If the standard measurement period is 12, the stability period is 12 months. What I want you to think about, don't forget this, the stability starts, the start date of the stability period date of your medical renewal, January 1, stability starts January 1. If your renewal is May 1, stability period starts May 1. And keep that in mind, okay? Stability period will be in line with or start with the health renewal. And lastly, just with new clients. So let's look at 2 examples. We have one here for January 2015, which actually is a Thursday. Happy New Year. And the plan year begins. We're going to assess this employer, and we've determined that a 12-month standard measurement period and initial measurement period is the best for them. We've also determined that a 1-month administrative period is sufficient, and that since our standard measurement period is 12 months, the stability period needs to be the same as, so it's also at 12 months. So let's look at this calendar year renewal. So if we were to begin, the employer mandate begins January 1st, then you need to determine which employees, variable hour employees, full-time, are eligible to enroll in benefits on January 1st. Otherwise, again, IRS, confirm and verify, so you have to do this measurement, okay? So let's look at a standard measurement period. So if your stability period is going to fall on your health plan renewal, right? So I said stability period, the start date would be January 1. We got to kind of go back, all right? So I'll put these 2 up here. So if January 1st would begin the stability period, that means we go 1 month back. The administrative period is in December, which means that the 12-month standard measurement period would have to have begun December 1st, 2013 through November 30th. That's right. So a January 1 renewal, having a 12-month standard measurement period and stability period, would have to have begun their measuring of variable hour employees at the end of 2013. So if we follow this model along, the standard measurement period begins on the same date each and every calendar year, so that's always going to begin December 1st, December 1st, December 1st, December 1st. Once the administrative period is done, on January 1st, 2015, that stability period exists. And that's the point in time where the employee, you can't change it, status quo. They're going to continue if they needed to be offered coverage. They're offered coverage through that entire stability period, regardless of the number of hours that they work during that period. And if you just keep following through this, again, once the standard measurement period has completed November 30th of 2015, the administrative period kicks in. You've got the standard measurement period and stability period kicking in here time and time again. Let's look, though, now at a new hire. An initial measurement period is for a new hire, okay? And so as each new hire comes employed with that employer throughout the year, a new initial measurement period will begin for every new hire. So if you hired 10 employees in the month of March, and it was March 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, all the way through 10, a new initial measurement period would begin each day, March 1st through the 10th, and that period, that measuring would need to occur for each separate measurement period. So let's assume a new hire was hired here March 1st. They also have a 12-month initial measurement period to be measured. There will be an administrative period assessed to ascertain whether that employee deserves to have coverage or not based on the hours worked. And then a stability period would be in place for that new hire to kind of keep the status quo through that. Now, once the new hire finishes their initial measurement period, they are then concurrently being measured through the standard measurement period. So you see here in the middle, they would be actually also being measured in the standard measurement period dated 12/1/2014 through November 30th, 2015. Whew. Everybody got it? All right, let's do one more. So let's look at a fiscal plan year, March 2015. We've got March 1st, Company B here. Their standard measurement period is now 9 months. The administrative period is a bit longer at 3 months, and the stability period is at 9 months. Again, this can vary. You're going to have these conversations, and it will vary based on the needs of the client. You know, what length of time is best. And when does the stability period, should it begin? Yes, on their health plan renewal. So always keep that in mind. Stability period starts when their health plan renewal starts or kicks in. So let's look at Company B here in their March 2015 renewal. So again, I've said that the stability period falls on the renewal. So that means the stability period will begin March 1st of each year, okay? But then we go back. Let's do a reverse timeline. We've got a 3-month administrative period and then a 9-month standard measurement period. So as you kind of do a reverse timeline, that means that the measurement for this employer who has a March 1st renewal date with this specific measurement period length of 9 months and an administrative period of 3 months, that they needed to start measuring our employees March 1st of this year. Carry through to November, a 3-month administrative period, and then stability period would then begin again. Keep in mind, the standard measurement period occurs at the same every calendar year. So you see here that the standard measurement period is on March 1st and running for 9 months. The administrative period is always sitting in that 3-month period, changing. And then this period is always going to be part of the health plan renewal at March. Same here for a new hire here that starts July of this year, 2015. We need to measure them months in which we do. We then apply an administrative period using 3 months like we did here before. And then a stability period would be in tow as well for the new hire. So as you look at this, I mean, there's a lot of information flowing through here, a lot of information, not only ongoing employees that are very employees or even full, but you're going to have changes here where the status of an employee goes from full-time, part-time to, to under hours to over 30 hours, and each employee will be measured, okay? And again, as you think of employer information report, measurement period process and evaluation is critical to confirm the confirmation and verification of the IRS. They are going to. So as you think about this, and that's the failure for non-compliance, well, it can be pretty costly. I mean, an employer may not want to comply with the employer mandate period. Financially, they're going to get hit with penalties. But don't play. You are playing, offering affordable coverage and so forth. You know what? It's costly just for the aspect of employees, attracting employees. Retention of employees will be critical as well. So what I want you to do is to begin, if not begin your discussion, because I haven't thought about those employers 90 to 99 for the 2016. If you've got a January 1 renewal they must begin the periods now, 2014. So finalize, if you have started it, finalize that discussion with your employer to determine the lengths of measurement periods. I see two people in this discussion, the benefit professional, employer. It is not the CPA. It's generally, they're getting recommendations from a partner such as, I mean, we've got a lot of opinions and recommendations to provide, but ultimately, you, employer, are closest to this decision process, and it will be most between the two of you. Really figure out what what could you provide to assist your clients through this compliance process. You also need to figure out the employer's role. I mean, clearly the employer is central in this, but figure out how the employer feels they will actually drive this specific evaluation and measurement periods. And lastly, vendors' role in this solution. You know, PrimePay has taken a very strong stance in delivering to our payroll clients a complete healthcare reform reporting bundle that includes not only how they calculate their FTEs if they're an applicable large employer, but also manages all of the measurement periods, and it's free for our payroll clients. Now that's our solution. So part of your discussion with your client is also to see how other vendors, other partners might be able to engage and assist and create more efficiencies for your employer, because ultimately your employer is the one that's going to be in the weeds with this particular requirement. So determine that view of the solution. These are great next steps. They're not easy, right? But it's a great conversation that you can have with your clients. So I realize I went a little longer here today, but I really appreciate the attention that you have given. One thing that I want to note is that our channel managers, our team here at PrimePay is ready to talk about these specific requirements. We may not have all the answers yet, per se, but we have some solutions that can actually help assist you and your clients through these specific requirements, and we'd love to chat with you. This time of year, as we think about Thanksgiving, it's not a better time than any to truly thank you, our business partners, for referring PrimePay and our capabilities and solutions to your clients here in 2014. You've entrusted PrimePay with a lot, and we cannot be more grateful for allowing us to work with your clients through this year, and we truly hope that we can drive a lot of these solutions and help you in your efforts to drive the obligation to your employers. So happy Thanksgiving. We thank you for attending. As a follow-up to this webinar, as we have always provided, or generally always provided, is we will be providing a recording of the presentation today. You will also get the slide deck presentation. We'll provide you also with important links to the IRS in regard to 6055 and 56 and other links that might be helpful to you. We will be providing the FAQ that will list all the questions that were asked. There were many today. Fantastic. You guys did a great job. We will get that FAQ to you as well. So with that, that will conclude our webinar for today. This also closes our last webinar of 2014 as part of our monthly broker series. So with that, happy holidays, and we look forward to coming back to you with greater strategies and solutions, and to really help you manage your client's business in a better way. So with that, have a great day, and be safe. Take care. Bye-bye.